Hi YouTube, good morning, it's Chuck. Welcome back to the apiary. Well, it's grafting day is coming up very quickly, but today's task is preparing the starter. I'm going to give you a quick introduction about what we're going to do today, how I build a starter, at least how I'm going to do it this year, maybe give you a couple other options of the ways I've built starters in the past, and then we're going to talk a little bit about what has to happen in the apiary. And let me tell you, I'm doing this up here on the table today because we are going to be shaking some bees, and we're going to have a lot of bees flying everywhere, and it might not make quite as much sense in the apiary what we're doing as it does here on the table. So this year I'm doing what's called a swarm box starter. This is a starter that I've built, and I've got a little inner cover here. I'm using the double bubble inner cover these days on these things, and this is just a 5-frame nucleus on top of a extension that has some screen in it. This extension, and the purpose of this extension, is to give volume and ventilation to the bees that will be contained inside of this swarm box starter. This is different than a free-flying starter that has, been made queenless on a section and has an entrance to come and go until let drones escape and things like that. We're actually going to contain the bees in here, but for the purposes of making queen cells over the next couple of weeks. So if you're containing the bees, you got to give them everything they need to live. You got to give them water, you got to give them food, sugar, and they need to have pollen also, especially if they need to raise your young. So just for water, this is just a small little feta cheese thing with a little bit of a flap. I've already put water in here and it's got some sponges in there. Just set that on the bottom somewhere. The little flap is so that when I'm shaking the bees, they don't go in. That's another little tip from Jason Christman he did years ago. You can have it open if there's no standing water in there. And then this nuke box just fits right on top. It's got a couple frames on the edges just so it doesn't slide and it fits. It's not screwed or anything. But inside the box, we have the 5 frames I've got set up here for demonstration purposes. Let's start in the middle, because the middle is the one we're going to be working on today. This is the graft frame. This is the frame with all of the cells, and these are the JZBZ plastic cups. I've got several different graft frames, and I will show that in my later video while we're grafting other ways you can do graft frames. That is going to be in the middle. That is the common sense one, right? But let's start over here on the edge. I've got yellow here marked on top of a single frame feeder. That is going to be filled with 1-to-1 sugar syrup. If you don't have a single frame feeder or something like this, definitely a frame of honey with open nectar on it. All capped honey is not as good as open nectar because the bees, it takes extra energy to consume that honey and process it down into nectar, especially to feed the young bees. So open nectar or a sugar feeder. The next one is marked orange for heavy pollen. I'm going to try to find in the apiary today when we're out there working the heaviest pollen frame I can possibly find and put it right next to my graft frame. And then the next one is open brood, older than 3 days if possible. And the reason is you need that brood pheromone. You need to get the nurse bees up here next to this graft frame. And also you don't want to have a scenario with young larvae that could also be turned into queen cells. If they do make some queen cells on this frame, that's not a big deal. You just plan on cutting them out because the genetics and the grafting is what we're after. We're not after open swarm cells. But this is open brood as much as you can. Big fat pearly white larvae would be perfect. No eggs, no tiny little grafting size larvae. And then this is the little trick that's probably the most important about having young nurse bees that are engorged with food. Open foundation or some sort of frame that they need to work on. These bees are going to be crowded in here, and if you don't give them something to draw wax on, they are going to draw wax in between each of these cells, and they will connect your grafted cells like a spider web, and you have to use an X-Acto knife or some sort of blade to cut them apart. So this is the layout that we're going to do in the apiary today of the frames. Empty foundation, a feeder, pollen, and then open brood, preferably older than 3 days, and then we're going to put our graft frame in the middle. Now, we are going to put our graft frame out in the apiary today. We are going to put the graft frame in here for them to polish up before we graft later on today. I am rushing this scenario a little bit more than I originally planned because of some timing with work. This hive is not going to have a full 24 hours queenless. It's going to have about 12 hours of queenless before the grafting, which is adequate to get their swarm and emergency impulse going. And the reason I'm doing that is I need them to have 24 hours to draw out these cells before I put this frame into the finisher colony, which is a queen-right colony with a queen below an excluder, so the queen can't come up and get your cells that they've made, but the finisher hive will finish that off, and then this hive will continue to stay as a swarm box and then regraft as necessary. So when we get out of the apiary, we have a few things that we need to do while we're in the apiary. I'm going to go ahead and talk through them now, so while I'm out there you'll understand a little bit more. We got to get to our strongest hives, which is why I've marked every one of my hives. It's medium, strong, or weak. And right now I've only got 2 that are medium. Everything else is strong. I've almost got too many bees. And that's the other reason I'm kind of rushing this a little bit. I need some queens for splits as soon as possible, because I'm probably even going to have to do splits early and make them start making their own queens and then give them grafted cells later, just because they're getting so strong and the weather's been so warm here in early February. Okay, so we're going to identify our strongest hives, and of course we need to identify our grafting breeder queen, and I've already done that, and I've done it in previous videos. A couple little circumstances have changed where I'm only going to use 1 queen for breeding this year, because the other one I had identified ended up starting super seizure and they started replacing her. I do have the queen separated, but she's no longer going to be my second choice breeder queen. So the breeder queen, we need to identify the frame that we need to have with the larva of the right age for grafting later on this evening. So that's important. So we got to get into that hive, we got to find the right frame, and we need to put it up in the top so it's easy to get to. And that breeder colony is also one of our strongest. So I'm probably going to start with the breeder colony. I'm going to go ahead and crack it open, and I need to find the queen. The reason I need to find the queen is because I'm going to start shaking bees into this box. I'm going to take these 3 out, and I'll probably just leave the feeder in here, and I'm going to be shaking bees in here until this thing is overflowing with bees, and you're going to see that later in this video, and it's going to be pretty exciting, I have a feeling. So I don't want to shake the queen in here. And then I need to continue to look, add bees, and look for these 2 perfect frames we talked about already. I need to find the perfect heavy pollen frame. I need to find the perfect open brood frame. If I find that pollen and open brood frame, I can go ahead and put them in here, maybe take this foundation out and continue to shake. You need about 3 frames open for shaking, because you kind of need a little bit of room to shake the bees off so they go down and get down here a little bit into the bottom without overflowing the top, and then you got to brush them all back in. Okay, so we've isolated the eggs that we want to graft on. We're going to go ahead and shake all the bees that we want out of the most populous hives. In the hive that we think we want to be the finisher tomorrow, 24 hours after grafting, we need to make sure we also have that hive queen found and underneath an excluder, because the finisher hive has to be queen right, but it also needs to have the queen so she can't get to the cell. So I'll probably take another one of the stronger hives, find the queen, put her down below, make sure the bottom box is right, put the queen excluder on, continue to shake, and then when I put that hive back together, in the very top, I'm going to kind of know or make sure there's room for me to put this graft frame when it's in the finish mode right in the top above the queen excluder so they can finish these cells out, and that will take a few more days. That's not what this is about. So that's the process today. We have a lot of work to do to get these bees in here. We got to get them in early because I need them to give them the sense of queenlessness before grafting later on this evening. So that's kind of why I'm out here at daybreak this morning. You can probably hear the birds out there over the pond, and here at the end of this opening clip, those of you that know what birds those are, leave me a comment below. It's one of my favorite birds we have here, and they come back this time of year, and I love the way they fly. I love the way they sing. Okay, that's it for the intro. I'm gonna go ahead and cut this out, get in the apiary, and we'll start shaking some bees. Stick around. All right, everybody, we're back in the apiary. I've got the camera a little further back today so you can see kind of the whole work sequence. Here's the shaker box where we're gonna go ahead and put the bees for the starter. I've got my feeder, I've got my graft frames here, so I'm all set up here, but this is my breeder queen right here. It's a strong hive. I've got lots of strong hives to be shaken from, so I'm going to be taking bees from here, starting there after the queen, but that's the order of sequence that we talked about. So I'm going to go ahead and suit up because I'm going to be making kind of a mess today. So stick around with me and let's see how it goes. All right, breeder queen to start. I always set my lid to the side so I don't have to set any frames on the bottom. Try to stay out of your, oh my gosh. Look at that. I don't know if you can see that. I'll try to zoom in, but this box is just exploding. If there are not swarm cells in here, I'm just gonna I have a hard time believing it. But that's kind of what I'm talking about with these bees being this strong. We got to get some queens going so we have some breeders to make splits with. Or, I'm sorry, some young virgins to make splits with. These guys might even, well, hopefully the knockback from the making the swarm box will actually help a little bit. I'm expecting this to be food here on the ends, but yep, food, drones, capped. So second from the end is food. Third from the end is going to be food. I'm going to have to keep these ladies smoked down. It's early. Drones, brood. Okay, so I'm looking for the queens, what I'm doing first. Now this is an open brood frame. And it's not as enough open brood as I want, but I just kind of want to show you real quick as we get going. Then I'm going to start going a little bit faster, how many bees there are, how many drones there are, and the drones are still hatching. So there should be plenty of mated queens out here. Listen to me, I'm not even talking straight. Mature drones for mating queens. More drones, open brood. Now you really don't want drones in your starter colony if you can help it, because they're dead weight that the nurse bees just have to take care of. So you really should try to find frame. Now this is a solid covered frame here with worker brood. This would be a good one to shake off of to get some bees, just to kind of give you, this is the kind of frame you want to get nurse bees off of. You know, I can shake them directly into the box, or I can shake them into a box like this and let all of the mature foragers fly away. A few minutes later, just kind of shaking the nurse bees. So far it's been 2 frames of drone, the first frame of worker brood, and this is in the top box. Oh my gosh, she is laying up a storm. This is why she's my breeder though. Just to kind of worker, drone brood everywhere. Top box. Looking for the queen. That'd be another good shaker box there too. I'm not doing a very good job keeping them smoked down. All right, I'm gonna keep on working. Okay, this is the type of pollen frame I needed. It's one-sided, so I'm not gonna say this is it for sure, but lots of pollen. There's food and pollen on the other side, so this is a good pollen candidate. Found the queen. Okay, so this is my breeder queen. This hive is where I'm taking the eggs. But now that I've got the queen, I'm gonna cage her so I can be a little bit quicker on the shakes now, because I don't have to worry about putting her in the box. Okay, queen is now safe. And she's gonna go back in the box at the bottom here in a little bit. This is a nice pollen frame also, with a little bit of capped brood, but there's eggs in it, so I want to avoid the eggs. So now that I've found the queen, I'm also looking for my grafting frame. And it might be in the center down here in this bottom one, something with some open cells. It's a lot of pollen too. So I've got plenty of space in this bottom frame. You see how I've got these open frames down here for drawing. They're doing a good job. So there's definitely space in here for them to work. Looking for the right age larva. This is a good frame to shake some bees. Let me go ahead and show you the bucket technique. Okay, this is the kind of pollen frame I'm looking for. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this in the box. I hadn't found the queen yet, so I shook all the bees off of it. Pollen, food, that's what we're looking for. All right, YouTube, I have got them all riled up. I need to finish this up because one of them got in my suit and stung me in the eyelid, and before I turn into a puffy eye, I figured I'd wrap this up. So obviously the bees are stirred up. I shook and shook and shook, and that's almost as bad as a bear getting a hive for disrupting them and aggravating them. Anyway, full on up. You can even see some sticking on the outside. On the inside, I got my feeder full. I got my grafting frame so they can start polishing those up. I got my open brood frame and a foundation frame. So this is concealed or sealed and ready to go. It's got water in it. These bees will be fine with that much water. And they're mostly nurse bees. I left them all in the bucket so the foragers would fly away. That helps get mostly for nurse bees. So they are now queenless. About 4 to 8 hours, they will definitely be in the emergency mode. I will graft this evening, and we'll show that separately. But that is how I make my swarm box for queen rearing. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Have a great day, everybody.